Welcome to How Women Inspire. Today's guest is the master of the innovation practices. She speaks, writes, and delivers transformational programs globally, all over the globe. And her focus is on two of the biggest levers for human innovation: our mindset, the innovation mindset, and 100% capacity leadership. We all need those. I'm telling you, this is lean in, everyone. This is very exciting. She's the CEO of 100% Capacity, an innovation community platform that combines community mastery and purpose to create sustainable innovation. This woman leader is Irish, and you will hear her voice and you will hear her perspective where the Irish comes out in a second. She's also a mom, a geologist, and a geotechnical engineer. She's been recognized as a top 50 thought leader in innovation and design thinking. Please join me in just leaning in to learning from Jennifer Kenny. Jennifer, what a treat to have you with us.
Thank you very much. What a pleasure to be
favorite
here.
People
you
are. Yeah, you are so fun and so smart, and I always learn so much when we're together.
Thank you.
Before we get into your big, beautiful brain, I'm going to force you into the other part of your brain, which is creativity. What is that song that you listen to when times are tough, or when you need a little, when you want to dance around and celebrate your successes?
Well, it's a U2 song, of course. It's Pride in the Name of Love, which I just love. So it just covers so much.
It certainly does.
Yeah,
it certainly does. So can you just tell us a little bit more about what is the Human Innovation Framework? What does that even mean? And how can you actually use that framework to transform organizations?
Yeah, so the framework that I've built around how to build innovation capacity does a couple of different things. It establish the innovation mindset, which is really a deep understanding of how to lead in complex adaptive systems, which is our organizations as they move, change, evolve, and the ecosystems that we work in. So that's one. And then the second thing is it's designed to remove the friction so that innovators can do their best work, because that is a huge source of undermining of our innovation capacity. We also look to create an environment that supports autonomy, because we, for the first time, I think in the history of humanity, we are in a place where we are all well educated enough to have a higher level of autonomy than our current organizations are able to provide for us. So we have this tension between our individual autonomy and how the org moves. So we help with that. And then we look to align the practices with the existing environment so we don't have disconnects there. And then we also look to establish listening across the ecosystem so that the innovators can be in tune with their end customers and with their investors and with their suppliers and provide more creative, more innovative solutions.
So in practical sense, when I am running an organization or leading an effort, are you suggesting that it's the leader that takes this on and creates this framework, or does this go throughout the entire organization in terms of mindset? And
it definitely goes throughout the entire organization. It needs support top down and bottom up. Otherwise, we all know the top-down initiatives don't really work. So, and the innovation mindset is a mindset that once you embrace it and once you understand it and once you begin to practice it, then you look for people around you to have a similar mindset to be able to work more effectively with you. So invariably, when we do work like this, and clients and people move to somewhere else, they then turn around and go, wait, these people are all still, working in the old way of working. We need to change that. So invariably we end up doing work with them. So it's good.
We still are treating employees like an assembly line. Like how do we need to modernize our understanding of how to get their contributions in this innovation space? Like, what are some practical things we can do?
Yeah, some of the practical things that we can do is one of the foundational things we do that sounds incredibly simple, but yet is really transformational and is also incredibly practical, is we actually teach people how to make powerful offers to each other. And if you think about it, that sounds, of course, right? But very, very few people know how to do that, because very few people take the time to do the deep listening, take the time to figure out the context, take the time to understand what the shared standards might be, take the time to really be able to empathize with another human being in order to deliver something that's incredibly valuable for them. And so we help people be able to do that. And once they get that going and we get that engine moving within the organization, then we tap into the generative capacity of the human beings that are there. And, human beings are innately creative and innovative. And it's our systems that get in the way of us really being able to express that. So we're looking to quietly change things.
Oh, I was reading an article that was the CIA's handbook for how you undermine an institution. And it literally said, put a whole bunch of structures and rules and policies in place. And have tons of meetings. There's nothing better to kill the progress of an organization. Is that what you're talking about? Is it creating?
That is some of it. That is some of it. But it's also the notion. So I was working with a group once, and there was a young person there who had just joined 2 weeks ago. And they said, hey, I'm going out to headquarters. What would you recommend that I do? And I said, I recommend that you identify 6 people you want to build trust with. And then you figure out what you have that could be valuable for them, or what you could do that could be valuable for them. And then you go and offer it to them. Yeah. And they were like, oh, now in a quote unquote normal work environment, I'd say, well, you should understand the structure and the order and the hierarchy and all of that. But no, you go and you actually identify human beings that you can add value for. And I think that's at the heart of what it is that we're doing, because that gives people a level of power and autonomy that they thrive on, especially people who want to contribute, which is most people.
Yeah, everybody wants to do a good job. It's just when we make it impossible that they start to cause problems.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I love that. I mean, I'm always talking to people about it's relationships. It's not transactions. You actually have to build real relationships with people. Sounds to me like that's a bit of the underpinning that you're talking about in a simplistic way.
Absolutely.
All right, so can you tell if women or men are more geared towards this? Is there a gender difference in any of this?
Oh, interesting. No, I don't think so. Not in this. I do think that, and obviously this is the next book that I'm working on. I was looking at the cover designs today, actually. So
you've always got the next one coming. I love it.
Yeah, the next one coming. The next one's going to be called Gold Mine, which is really looking at exactly what you're pointing to here is what are the traits and qualities that women bring to the table, and how do we understand them better so that we can engage those for more effective innovation? And some of those things are the listening, the empathizing, the impact that gender balanced teams can have is well recorded now. We've got loads of data on it. You're familiar with a lot of the data. But what I've seen from my research is there are 7 specific areas inside corporations where gender balanced teams can have a significant impact. And one of them is innovation. Then there's decision-making, risk management, customer sat, employee engagement, operational improvement, and strategy. And so the traits and qualities that women bring to the table are different. And the deal is, how can you recognize those and use them so that we can amplify each other regardless of gender?
Well, and we know that when you disrupt groupthink, or you have diversity on a team, it upgames everybody. It's not just that, you add a different kind of person to a group and that person is so powerful. It's everybody prepares more and differently.
Exactly.
Like that's part of what you're talking about. As you know, my whole thing is justice and equity for women, people of color, and just generally justice. You say it's not a justice play. So, when you think about this, does that intersect at all with justice, or how do you connect this to, I know you care a lot about that. Like you and I've done a lot with women globally. I know that's important to you.
Yeah, but here's the interesting thing about it is, so because of the way we human beings have been trained to think, we think about either or and binaries, which is really kind of sad because that's not the way the world works and it's not the way our brains are formed. So what we do is we go, social justice is the right thing to do. Now, you and I both know that the right thing and the best thing are often the same thing. But most people view it as the right thing and the wrong thing. So we miss out on recognizing that a lot of the social justice efforts are actually going to serve all of us better in the long run. So what I've done with this is I've said, look, I'm not having a social justice conversation because we don't need to have one. I want to prove to you the value of gender balanced leadership driving innovation and all the other things it drives. And you can see for yourself and you can implement it for yourself and you can get the results for yourself. And then you can decide whether or not it's the right thing to do, right? Now, invariably, it will be. But I'm more interested in how do we help people understand this isn't something they have to do. This is something that will serve them and their shareholders enormously well.
Okay, so I'm 100% on board with this in concept. I'm trying to get my arms around all of the ways to implement. So you've given us a very great example of like, if you're going to build trust and move into a team, can you give us a couple other examples of how you can start to pivot towards an innovation mindset in your company?
Yeah, so if we look at gender balance driving innovation, one of the things that women are uniquely good at, and when I say women, I'm not talking about the binary, obviously we're talking about a spectrum, you and I know that, but what's interesting is women are incredibly good at synthesis. So they're incredibly good at looking at a large, complex problem, issue, project, and being able to synthesize what's going to be the collateral impact, what's going to be the domino effect of whatever decisions that we make in here. And we've never really highlighted that, we humanity have never really highlighted that as a huge asset that is comparable to our strategic ability. And so what I'm super interested in is how do you bring that capacity online in a way that allows us to be able to have it impact innovation? So for example, I was running sessions with a number of research and development people, and I introduced this notion of gender balance and how it drives innovation, and I stepped them through what some of the language to begin to be able to understand it. And a half a dozen of the women in the group stood up and said, oh, I never realized that my ability to synthesize is actually hugely strategic. And so some of it is helping us build our ability to be able to recognize that and to know when to bring it on board, to have other people be able to see what it is, to have other people be able to partake of that value, and also to see how it isn't in opposition to what already exists, but it in fact amplifies it.
So it sounds to me like it's a little bit of like, what are all the, so they talk about the risk of engineering mindset, right? An engineering mindset doesn't even necessarily, it's like, I'm going to solve for this problem, but the user experience and the other things are often missing, right? From that engineering mindset. So you're talking about a mindset that incorporates, also how's the implementation going to roll out and who does it affect and where can it break down? I guess part of me is also thinking if let's say I'm doing a retreat of a team, what are the things that any elements that you would say, let's implement, integrate this into that planning retreat? How do I make sure innovation is really the cornerstone and really front and center, and so that we're not just saying the same thing over and over and repeating the same thing with more systems and more systems and more systems that's still your innovation?
Well, we started off by saying that my focus is innovation practices. So I'm not interested in putting in, more systems that are just going to get in the way. I'm much more interested in how do you help people build practices for themselves that they then fluidly bring to the organization at the appropriate time based on their understanding. So if you look at it, what are the practices? How do you get people to start embodying those as a practice? So one of them would be the 6 women that we were talking about a minute ago in the session that I was running. Great. So whenever you're synthesizing, bring that forward into the group, into the conversation, into the team, and go, hey, if I synthesize this, here's what I'm seeing. Because there's plenty of times where we go, we need to think about this more strategically, but rarely do we ever go, we need to stop back and synthesize this and see what the implications of it are going to be for the broader ecosystem. And so I think if we're looking at the broader ecosystem, we wouldn't have things like Lehman Brothers. We wouldn't have things like things we've just recently had with SVB. So it's the people who are able to look at the ecosystem impact that are incredibly important as we bring more products, services, innovations out into the complexity that we currently live in.
So when I think about you and who needs your book most, I mean, my brain immediately goes to that life cycle of corporations or life cycle of organizations where you innovate, you level, you innovate, you level, and then there comes a point where you start to decline. Is that who your main audience is? Or is it where do you think who needs the innovation mindset the most?
Well, so that's an interesting question. I think everybody needs the innovation mindset, obviously. So I've done this work with startups, I've done this work with high growth companies, but the people who call us the most often are the people who have got to the stage where they have a lot of brilliant ideas in the pipeline. They've spent lots of money on hiring really, really clever people, and they haven't managed to find a way to really have that be coherent and generative. And so they bring us in to go, how do I maintain the autonomy while actually delivering product? So we invariably get called in that space where there's a lot of huge potential, but it hasn't been realized. We first started doing this, we were doing it 25 years ago. We were looking at new product introduction as being one of our target areas, because that was the area where this all came to a halt. So we can do everything from the pure research and development stage of really understanding invention to innovation, and then everything from there to new product introduction, because it requires the same level of complex systems thinking in the players.
To me, and I know there's research from McKinsey that says it's like a $3 trillion opportunity.
Yeah.
We lose so much by having people feel like that I'm in a box, and
Yeah.
I can't contribute. I can't get my ideas forward. So I'm just going to do the minimum. Like we've had you and I both have adult children, my kids are like catching the sickness of this of like, well, I'm just going to do the minimum and check out. Right.
Yeah.
Where is this advantage that we can take advantage of? Like what's the lever here for all of us to get this $1 trillion release, this $3 trillion release that McKinsey talks about?
Well, I think it's a change, and I don't think it's a radical one. I think it's a gradual one, where we require the leaders in our organizations to be able to have a level of emotional maturity and sophistication where they can actually dance more effectively without all of the structures behind them. And I look at it as the difference between power with versus power over. So power over is currently how we run everything, and you and I both know that well. Power with is a completely different game that was first introduced in the 1920s by a brilliant woman named Mary Parker Follett. She talked about power with. And we have failed abysmally to be able to make power with happen. I think that we've done that. We're trying to move ourselves towards it in some of the more leading democratic states and countries. But our ability to be able to do power with at work is poor. And what this does is, in order for innovation to happen, you have to get really sophisticated in being able to play the power with game. And that then becomes almost a requirement of what it means to lead effectively as a senior executive.
Fantastic. Well, I feel like I'm soaking it all up, and thank you so much for sharing the elements of this new perspective and of the book, The Innovation Mindset, that you just released. Can we talk just real quick about you? I mean, you're fascinating. Like, how does somebody go from your background, which to me, I don't know, maybe in my ignorant way of thinking, somebody who is a geotechnical engineer, why is she the expert on innovation? Like, I don't know how that works. Did you?
Well, so I got a big serendipitous gift when I was in my 20s, which was I wandered into a geology class, which I was going to take for a year and then drop it and move on. And I fell in love with it because geology is the mother of all systems thinking. If you think about it, it's like we wouldn't be here without the geology. So for me, it was systems thinking at its most elegant, most manifest, most coherent, most sophisticated. And I immersed myself in that for 5 years with an undergrad and a master's. And then everywhere I went, I was always going, well, this isn't systems thinking. I don't want to play. Well, no, this is. And I recognize systems thinking as being nature's blueprint for how to be smart.
Yeah.
And so I have always, and then I realized that nobody else very few people had the gift I'd been serendipitously given. And so my goal was always, how do you help people, no matter what circumstances they're in, business being obviously the most obvious one, really understand and appreciate and value and implement systems thinking for themselves in their work and in their lives.
Fantastic. Yeah. You and I think we first met around a global women's leadership effort. You were the chair of the board. You've been so generous in leading in this space in the world. You say this isn't a social justice frame for, like, let's say corporations need this, and it's not about justice, it's about making money and doing a good job and not having a decline. But how does this intersect with justice, with making the world a better place, which I know is so important to you?
Yeah, no, great question, Julie. So for me, there's sort of two ways to make the world a better place. One is, how do we help the vast majority of humans alive today have the basics in order to be able to really function effectively in the world? And then the second one is the people who are already have all of the basics, AKA, all of Europe and North America. How do we help them be more effective in their ability to be able to think whole systems systemically? So I'm always doing two things. I'm always doing what I refer to as the social justice, bring everyone to the table part of the work. And then how do we bring the rich people to the table in a way that they can understand how the whole system works? So I'm working both sides of it constantly.
This has been fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your innovative thinking and your perspective that's going to help drive so many of us to be better. And I look forward to releasing that $3 trillion that McKinsey talks about because of your you being a wedge in the market and helping.
And hopefully some of it will go in the right direction.
Yes, well, hopefully if people have an ecosystem approach, if they think about, if I help the middle class or get jobs for people, how does that fuel my, that's what the thing, that's what I'm hearing you talking about. And I hope we all, I hope that that's what we can look forward to. So thank you, my friend, for your time today.
Thank you. Good to see you.
And I've seen you in action. I've seen how you have carried this throughout the work that you've done and all the things that you've touched. And I hope people really get a chance to lean in and can find more information about this in your book, The Innovation Mindset. So thank you very much, Jennifer.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.